Right, hello everyone. My name is Sarah Beilfuss. I'm the founder of the Chronic Recovery Centre, and I'm here today to talk to you about fatigue. And when I say fatigue, I'm not talking about being tired after a long day at work. I'm talking about a medical condition, about this desperate exhaustion that can't be relieved by a good night's sleep. And just to get a bit of a feel of who we have in the room, just by a show of hands, who here needs caffeine to get going in the morning? Anyone? Okay. And who here has, even after a good night's rest, trouble getting up in the morning? Okay. And who finds that things that you were able to do quite easily a few years ago, today it just seems so much more effort? Yeah? Okay. And who of you is here due to a personal interest in fatigue, because you might think you have it, or?
I have an interest because two of my friends displayed these symptoms.
Okay.
And they've diagnosed themselves as suffering from fatigue.
Okay. And who is here because of a professional interest? Okay. All right.
Let me just call that professional is that my company was one of the sponsors.
Okay, fair enough. Right, so you've all experienced needing the coffee pick-me-up and sort of the feeling of things needing extra effort. And these things are actually part of fatigue. They are some of the symptoms. Other things that you might be experiencing is sort of a feeling of overwhelm. Having two or three things on at the same time, which maybe a little while back you would have been able to do quite easily. And now all of a sudden you feel overwhelmed when one more thing is added to your to-do list. Or you may have put on some weight and you're struggling to shift it, even though you seem to be doing all the right things. Another very typical symptom is what's called the brain fog. If you've had it, you know what I mean. It's this feeling that when you get up in the morning and somehow your brain stayed in bed. You might know that feeling. Or you might have trouble getting to sleep or waking up frequently. You may also experience a lower sex drive, and that's why I'm not asking for you to put your hands up anymore. All of these are symptoms, and depending on how severe your symptoms are or how many of these symptoms you experience, you can determine how far advanced your fatigue is. And certainly in a more severe fatigue, you will also experience quite frequently muscle pain as well, even when you haven't exercised very strenuously. The reason why I've founded the Chronic Recovery Centre and why I'm interested in this subject is because I've been through it myself. I've been to doctors telling me that, you're going to have to cope with it, going to have to learn to manage your symptoms. And I recovered fully. I have been lied to. And I am so sick and tired of being told that you're going to have to live with it. And we can send you on a course to learn how to cope with it and how you can manage your symptoms. I'm sick and tired of people walking around out there and they are ill and nobody's helping them. When there is a cure, it is possible to recover. And this is why I founded the Chronic Recovery Centre, because I found three key areas that need to be addressed in order to recover fully. And through the Chronic Recovery Centre, I am helping other people suffering from the condition to regain their health and to get their life back. Because you can imagine, if you suffer from this condition, everyday life has become so difficult. You barely can get out of bed. You're missing out on life. You're missing out on job opportunities. You're missing out on relationships and on time with your loved ones. So it can be a very disabling condition to have. And the only way, I say, is to recover fully and to get your life back. So let me just tell you a little bit about my story and how I ended up here, and about the three key areas that I discovered along the way. In 2007, so quite a while back, I went from one doctor to the next because I was so tired all the time. I was just 26 years old, so I should have been full of energy. And I just wasn't. And in fact, it didn't really matter how much I slept. I would still be tired. And sometimes I would wake up after 16 hours of sleep and I was still tired. So obviously something wasn't right. The doctors didn't quite know what was going on. They did test and after test and eventually diagnosed me with depression. And I insisted, I don't have depression. I'm depressed about the fact that I'm tired, but I do not have depression. They've put me on antidepressants anyway. And I was quite lucky that at the time I went to the gym very regularly. And one of the personal trainers came to me and he said, "Oh, Sarah, you're working out so much. You must have lost lots of weight. And this is really amazing." I said, "Well, actually, I haven't. And I'm putting it on. And I'm so tired." And he did an analysis with me to see how much do I eat, how much do I exercise. And this is how I became interested. Because as it turned out, my body thought it was starving. And this is why I had no energy. So this is where my journey began. And I'd found the first key area, which was good nutrition. And just by changing my nutrition, I really improved my energy levels. And I felt so much better for it. Then in 2009, I had 2 knockbacks where firstly my husband left me, and 2 weeks after, my baby sister, we grew up like twins, and she called me and the diagnosis was cancer. We were told that she wouldn't live to see her 30th birthday, and she was 27 at the time. So it was a shock to the entire family. I couldn't handle what was going on. I just didn't know what to do with myself. The husband is gone. I had to deal with my marriage being in shatters. Now my sister was ill and the whole family was suffering. So I started running away, literally. I started running. And I would run until I could run no more. And when I was able to still walk back into my house on my 2 feet, I would go another round until I literally in on all 4 and was too exhausted to think because my thoughts were just too painful to bear. And something really quite amazing happened, which is due to all the exercise, I achieved a level of health and wellness that I'd never known before. I became superhuman. I was bionic. I barely needed sleep, 4 hours a night, and the next morning I was switched on. It was absolutely amazing. It didn't really matter what you chucked at me. I could handle anything. I felt invincible. And in one of my nutrition books, I read this statement that the absence of illness doesn't equal health. And up until that point, it hadn't made sense to me. But now it did. Because what I was experiencing was real health. Not only was I not ill, but I had so much energy. It was astonishing. Because of all that energy, I got a promotion and I went to work abroad. This was in 2010. In 2011, the country that I was in at the time was shook up by political unrest and we were pulled out. Quite last minute as well. So it wasn't a joyous departure. While I was in this country, unfortunately, I wasn't able to continue with my healthy eating. I wasn't able to continue with my exercise because healthy food wasn't as readily available. We were working ridiculously long hours. I was working 60 to 80 hours a week, every week. And exercise wasn't possible because as a woman, I wasn't allowed to go into a gym. Apparently, you needed a penis to get in. And outside, it just wasn't safe. I did try this several times, regretted it every time because I was attacked several times when I was out there physically. So once I came back to London, I sort of had to pick the pieces back up. I'd lost my uber health, if you like, and I thought, I know what I need to do. I know nutrition and exercise is the key. So I went straight back in there. But it didn't quite do the trick again. And I was starting to get more tired, and I just didn't get, I was waiting for Bionic Sarah to come back, and she was really taking her time. So I exercised a little bit harder, trying to get there. And I went into this downward spiral of getting more tired. Then in 2012, I started having these horrendous migraines, sometimes 2 in a day. I couldn't get out of a dark room for several days in a row. And I'd been plagued by nightmares for quite a while by that time. And shortly after, sort of mid-2012, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Now I had a diagnosis, and I thought, okay, I know what I do. I run, and I exercise, and I eat well, and then it'll all be better. But it wasn't. Obviously, that hadn't worked since coming back from 2011. I thought, I just haven't tried hard enough. So off I went, and that downward spiral just accelerated. How hard I was being sucked down. And yet, now in 2014, here I am. In 2013, I wasn't able to work anymore. I hadn't worked at all in 2013. I was bedridden for most of that year. I'd pushed myself so hard and was sliding down that downward spiral until I literally could not get up anymore. So what happened for me to be able to be here and, to not have to stay in bed all day? Well, I found the missing link. I found the third out of the 3 key areas that you need for your health. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. The 3 key areas for health, obviously firstly is nutrition, but nutrition is about the foods that are right for you. And this can be different for every person. Some people are able to eat wheat, others can't digest gluten very well. So it's very crucial to find the right nutrition for each person. Lifestyle, exercise, rest, that's what we need. And I thought I had this covered. And I had achieved good health through nutrition and lifestyle. But the missing link, I said there's 3 key areas, and that's the mindset. And that's how your thoughts and your beliefs impact on your health. And I'm not talking about putting out positive vibes and then the universe will provide. Picture yourself healthy and you will be. I'm talking about a very physical link between how your thoughts react in your body. And there is a physical reaction to it. Stressful thoughts trigger your body's stress response, which means that your body is flooded with adrenaline, with cortisol. And these hormones, they suppress things like digestion, they higher your blood pressure, they higher your heartbeat, because this is the fight and flight response. You might know that feeling when you go down an alley and you hear someone behind you and you have this, that's the stress response. Instantly, your muscles are twitching, you're ready to go. But every time you have these thoughts, the same thing happens. The stress response was designed by Mother Nature, by evolution, to get us out of sticky situations. Because if a caveman, going on his hunter-gathering tour, encounters a saber-toothed tiger, he needs to get out of there, because that's not just, a difficult situation. This is life or death. He doesn't get out of there, he will become lunch. But unfortunately, our body hasn't quite caught up with how our lives have changed. And our body still understands stress in only one way: life or death. So whenever you have a problem with your neighbor that is really grinding on your nerves, your body thinks, I'm going to die. Or when you have a boss that is a real pain in the back and he really wants his report tomorrow and you're getting really stressed over it, your body thinks, I'm going to die. And this is what happened. When you think back to when I was exercising and eating well during my post-traumatic stress disorder days, trying to get back to health, what happened there was my mindset wasn't as it was the first time round. The first time round, remember, I was going running because I was running away. And it was clearing my mind. So in a way, you could say it was my way to meditate. And it was keeping away the stressful thoughts. Whereas now, whenever I went to exercise, it wasn't clearing my mind. I had this really nasty drill sergeant sitting on my shoulder the whole way going, "Come on, Sarah, you can do this faster and you can run further. What the hell is wrong with you?" This is what I had the entire run, whether I ran for 10 minutes, half an hour or an hour. All the time, this chatter, this vicious little gnome on my shoulder shouting abuse at me. So obviously that wasn't clearing my mind, that wasn't relaxing. And this is why the mindset is so important, and I hadn't sussed that until then. Now, if you come out later and have a chat with me at the stand, first of all, I'll be able to answer any questions you might have, but you're also able to win a Recovery Gateway package. That package includes 3 sessions with me, and each session is focused around one of the key areas. So that's something that you will be able to take away from here. Now, because the mindset was so important for me, I want to give you a very powerful tool that you can take away from here and use in your day-to-day life to make sure that you control that stress response a little bit better. Because it is really how we see things. The boss that wants the report in, he's not really a saber-toothed tiger. It's not really life or death. It's how we choose to respond to it. And Mark Twain said that quite beautifully when he says, "My life has been filled with terrible misfortunes, most of which have never happened." So the exercise or the tool that I want to give to you is called reframing. And what that means is if you imagine any scene, wherever you are, imagine it like a big picture. And it's about where you put your focus. So on one hand, you might have sunshine and children playing in the water, in the puddles. On the other side, there's some nasty dogs biting each other, bloodshed. It's horrible. How your experience about this picture depends on where you're looking. In every life situation, you can choose what you want to look at. And this is what reframing is about. So to give you one example, this is Africa. Massive. And that tiny little dot there, that's Mauritius. Mauritius is a small and insignificant island in the Indian Ocean. This is also Mauritius, and it is the largest ocean state in the entire world. Now, both of these statements are around the size, and depending on how you compare, depending on what comparison you make, both of these are factually correct. Compared to Africa, Mauritius might seem quite small and insignificant, but the fact is, it is the largest ocean state in the world. That's a much more positive way to look at it, isn't it? So what I would like to do is, over to you, if you think of anything that in the past or at the moment has caused you stress, or it might be someone in your family that is often stressed out, just give me an example. I'm just looking for volunteers.
I'm trying to think. What's interesting, Sarah, is I haven't actually thought. I have these bouts of anxiety regularly in my life. I think, oh my God. And I hadn't linked it to thinking that I'm going to die, actually. But what you said is really very interesting. That really, really struck home. I'm trying to think of things that I can share, that I can reframe.
Okay. So it doesn't have to be, you know, your own example, could be friends or family, and just to set the rules, whatever we share in the room, please has to stay in the room.
You know, when I complete forms, for example, I'm completing some at the moment for
Mhm.
something I'm trying to do, and it's asking one, or somebody rang up and said, oh, they need this. And my mind went down this sort of rabbit hole. If they want this, I want this, and I haven't done it right, and, you know, and my whole life was going to explode. This was last Tuesday, and I really did get into that state of
Right.
thinking, you know, something terrible is going to happen, until I did calm myself down and sort of talked it over with somebody and I realised it wasn't. But in that moment, this sort of tool would be very helpful.
So in that moment, what was it that made you feel like your work was going to explode?
It was, you know, it's a sense of being found out, and I don't know what I've done that's so terrible that will ever be found out or worthy of being found out, but you just get the I get the feeling that something will be uncovered that will undo unpick my life side or unravel. And this might be a common fear, perhaps, I don't know, but I just get the feeling it'll be one thing, because everything's quite smooth and lovely at the moment. I think it'll be one thing, and this might be it, and it'll all go. And I found myself very breathless and, you know, in that state of fight or flight almost.
And what if the thing that was unraveled and found out about you was that the task at hand you actually did very well and that you're actually very capable at doing that?
Yes, yeah. But I couldn't get to that point. It was just this whole thing unraveling.
See, this is where I say stress is a choice.
Yeah.
And just your body language there when you were talking about I could be found out, and I could see the stress. But when I suggested, what if they found out that you're actually quite capable? There was and your shoulders sank. And that's what reframing does.
Yeah.
Are there maybe any other examples that you'd like to share?
Sarah, I've had many life experiences, just surely by virtue of age, but there are younger people that have all those life experiences in a year's span. When I see things like this lady, I've always realised that the fear of something, the obsession of it, is always worse than the doing. But you have to go through the doing to come out the other side to realise the fear is a bogeyman.
Yes.
And I always hold hard and fast to the power is far greater than the fear in front of me.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you have to go through those experiences to realise that, whether that be on the battlefield or going over the Dartford Bridge or on the tube. On some things on thought, and this one at Wiltshire, a member of my family has manic depression that's called bipolar now, and I cannot talk rationally to somebody that is going through those sort of things. It just doesn't work. It's a drug thing that's a chemical imbalance that has to be brought into, and in their mind is genuine. And I take on board what you say. The mind will affect everything.
Yeah.
And whatever I have been through with my life, and you can see that one, the probably nutritious and fitness isn't part of the scale. But until ever I got myself sorted mentally, I couldn't do it physically. I was always getting the cart before the horse, thinking if I sort myself out physically, I can do this. And I never could.
Okay, you could never do what exactly?
Whatever challenge I was facing.
Okay.
It's the challenge is in me.
Yes.
I am my own worst enemy. And all the old sayings come back. Does that make sense?
But with reframing, you can start to look at it slightly differently. So once you start to identify the thought that is holding you back, then you can start to unpick that, and you can start to rephrase it and start to look at it from that perspective. So
Absolutely. My analogy probably would be if this lady got up and punched me in the face, I'd be angry, and I've every reason to be angry. if I was still harbouring a grudge at little Johnny Tucker in the school playground that did it and I was still looking for him, there's nothing wrong with him. The problem's with me.
Absolutely. And that's where you have the choice to let it go or to hold on to it. It's interesting that you said about depression and it's in the mind. I would argue that it's a very physical condition. And for me, one of my bugbears is that we call it a mental condition, because it makes people think that it's not real, it's in their heads, it's only real to them, they kind of make it up, and they're not. It is a physical condition, and the mental state is only a symptom. It's how that condition manifests itself and how it shows itself. But the underlying cause is very much a physical one that with the right support can be treated. Unfortunately, however, with the medical profession as it is today, and I'm not knocking them, we need the medical profession, we need our GPs, and for acute illnesses, they're the way to go. However, when it comes to chronic conditions, that's where it gets more difficult, because if you think your GP has 7 minutes to talk to you, usually you can raise one symptom at a time and you can't discuss anything else. They do not have the time to go through, looking at your nutrition, going through your lifestyle choices and looking at what is your mindset and where is your mindset holding you back on your way to recovery and on your way to full health. They just simply do not have that capacity. But there are ways, just because your GP doesn't have that capacity doesn't mean that recovery is not possible. It is. You just have to find different avenues. Okay. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I just want to know, Sarah, about adrenal fatigue particularly. Are there other types of this chronic fatigue?
Say it this way, chronic fatigue is what your doctor will diagnose you with.
Right, okay.
Adrenal fatigue could be an underlying cause. So the cause for fatigue is a hormonal imbalance. Your body, that's how your body communicates one part to another through hormones. And what happens in a stressful situation is that your hypothalamus tells your pituitary gland there's stress, and the pituitary gland tells your adrenal glands we need to get up and go. So they start chucking out all the adrenaline, all the cortisol. And the theory is with adrenal fatigue that the adrenal glands have had an impulse to, release these stress hormones for such a long time that they become exhausted and they're no longer able to generate the amounts of hormones. Because in the morning, getting up, you need a slight surge of cortisol to get up. That's the waking up. But when your adrenal glands are no longer able to produce that, that's when fatigue can result. It could also be that the receptors in your brain, because once your adrenal glands have released the cortisol goes back to your brain, and the brain then knows there's cortisol in the body, it's fine now, and they will then send another message down, if you will, to say, that's okay, you can stop now. But when the brain is desensitized, which can happen through prolonged stress, then that message never arrives. So the adrenal glands never get the message that we can take a rest now, it's all over, we're safe. So they continue getting the stimulus to produce more cortisol. So, and that's when it becomes a vicious circle.
That's very interesting, thank you.
That's all right. Any other questions? Okay, then I will close here. Thank you very much for paying attention to me, for listening to my story. My stand is just on the other side of that wall, so if you do have more questions or you want to talk about anything that I've raised here, you have further questions, then please do come and talk to me. Don't forget to leave your business card for your chance to win the Recovery Gateway package. All right, thank you.